over here talking on mute. Definitely saying good morning.
Everybody saying good morning back. We were so mute.
Yeah, everybody real quiet. How about they don't hear us? We can tell somebody's under the weather this morning, right? Over here.
It's just a formality. It don't mean nothing unless I make it something. So today we're not gonna make it nothing. Yeah. Welcome to Sacred Space Sunday. So are we recording it?
Yes.
We start recording? Okay.
Yes.
Are we doing the streaming?
Yes.
Okay. Awesome. So welcome for those that are here live on the Zoom and those that are joining us via the streaming, watching it via streaming. Welcome. I can't wait to jump on into this. You know, today is a big day. It's the 23rd of February. We are 6 days from the end of the month. Now, we only get the extra day once every 4 years. So that means this is a special February. You know, last week we had not last week, but last Sacred Space Sunday, which was the 9th, we had a special opportunity to celebrate, you know, one of our leaders, which is Naomi, in the celebration of her birthday. I know you had some thoughts and comments on that you may not have gotten to share. Did you want to say something about that before we get started?
Thank you, and thank you. You know, that was definitely a surprise and a beautiful moment and a wonderful way to share with everyone and to start my new revolution around the sun, which has continued to unfold, to continue to deliver on my declaration that this year would be a personal revolution. And so more about that later. But before we get into things, why don't we just take a moment to collectively become present, present to this moment, present to life. So wherever you are, I just ask that you kind of stop what you're doing and go within, whether that means eyes open, eyes closed, getting settled, and just becoming present to this space. And becoming present to the divine intelligence, the divine love, the source of all, that which is ultimate creator, that has created all life. We give thanks that it breathed us this morning, breathed life into us this morning, that it breathed our existence, that it is our existence, and our connection to this existence makes all is divinely enfolding, perfectly well and good, whatever it looks like. And it is that divine presence that allows us to drop into our hearts and our heart space, into the space of trust, where there lies freedom, where there lies openness, where there lies creativity and generosity, connection and abundance, overarching joy, fulfillment, ease, and peace. And so that's what we claim today, our connection to that which is ease, peace, joy, and love. Releasing control because we have none. And from a space of co-creation, we have the power to think, to speak, to declare. And so today I just declare that I am a channel, that Mark is a channel, that we are a channel of source and ultimate clarity and gifts. Our words are not ours, but what is to be communicated in this space, in this time, on this day to this audience. We give thanks for our voices. We give thanks for this clarity, and we give thanks for each of you, knowing that you are all well and good. And I release this to the action of the law, knowing that the goodness is working its magic. And so it is. Amen and Ashe.
So it is. Amen and Ashe.
So I am Niyah Jewel. I am the spiritual director of the Niyah Center, as well as an interfaith minister. And sitting next to me is my husband, Mark Christmas, director of holistic healing, master, certified Reiki master, and just an all-around healer. And so we give thanks for this opportunity to come to you all today, to connect with you all today, to be speaking here today. And we are on Zoom. And if you are following us on Facebook. Please share this live broadcast to your various communities. And if you're joining us from Facebook, we would love you to join us here on Zoom. All you have to do is click the link, which is in the body there, because this is where we actually have dialogue and communication and conversation. And so not only would we like to have you here, but we'd love to see your faces. This is how we build community. This is our community, and it is in our community. We are here not to talk at you, but to talk with you. So please share, and we look forward to a great conversation today where we are going to talk about the power of your story, the power of your story. And so Mark will share that in a moment. But again, we're here on Zoom. We do use the chat. We use the chat function. We give thanks for Angela Skeet Davis that helps to monitor and support us, and just is a person to ask a question if you want to know what's working, what's not working with Zoom. Just jump into Zoom. Angela, tell everybody hi in the Zoom chat for us. Great, thank you. There is a dial-in option that's also listed there if you want to call in. Those numbers are also in the invite there. And we are here on Sacred Space Sunday every other Sunday at 10 a.m. and will be for the foreseeable future, inshallah. So,
I don't see our stream on Facebook.
Okay. We were there and then it kicked us out.
Okay.
All right. So we'll have to try this again. So, with that, why don't you pick up what Sacred Space Sunday is out and what we stand for, so that I can reshare the link.
So Sacred Space Sunday, what is that? So, it's a few words, right? Sacred, obviously, because we have sacred trust right here. And when we say sacred trust, we're talking about great respect and reverence. Great respect and reverence for each person, for ourselves, for each other, for what is shared here, what is heard here, what is contemplated. And we also, it's a sacred trust because you can acknowledge what you hear without necessarily agreeing. And so it's not created to convince or convert, but simply to share, right? And then sacred space means the freedom and scope to live, think, and develop. The freedom and scope to live, think, and develop. So it's a space for open dialogue, meaning that we can listen generously and acknowledge a person without agreeing. We don't expect that we all think or feel the same about what is discussed or shared here. We're here to listen more than we are to talk, learn, and grow. And I say we, that's Naomi, we're not, right? We're here to question and understand, to feel what we feel, to connect authentically, right? We're not here to conform or convert. We're here to seeking to inspire and be inspired, to challenge and be challenged, right? So in Sacred Space Sunday, a review is about faith, oneness, and joy. Oneness, love, and joy is our tagline for the Niyah Center, and that's what Sacred Space Sunday is intended to really dive into. We've had a series of this year that's just been full packed. We started the year off with the Live It lifestyle, where we had Dr. Yadiel Christmas come and talk about plant-based lifestyle. We call it a Live It versus a diet, because we're talking about living, right? We've had an opportunity to talk about revolutions, right? We're celebrating revolution and celebrating life. We've had the opportunity to, as part of the Niyah Center, we had a professional women's retreat where we were able to bring an intensive weekend of Life by Design to about 10 professional women in Barbados. We are programming for the year coming up and look forward to an exciting summer. Welcome, Ashley and Jackie, for joining us live via video. And we really have a lot in store. Usually, I'm looking back, and really the Niyah Center kicked off August of 2019. I believe that our first event was August of 2019. And so we're about maybe 8 months away from that. It's been a full year. So we're really excited about the future of the Niyah Center, the future of the Sacred Space Sunday. And it's going to be up to us that are listening here. If you get something out of this, to share with people, to invite folks to join us every other Sunday, to support and donations, and invite folks to support, and so that we can continue to bring this programming not just to us on the phone, but to the world and those that, from many of the stories that we've heard, the impact that it's had on their lives. And so we welcome you, we welcome you, and we welcome you. Okay?
Awesome,
Are we
awesome,
live
awesome.
now?
Yes, we are. And so, yeah, we are. So, they call this Black History Month. We know that's ridiculous, right? For those of us of African descent, um, how could we possibly be 1 month, one part of the year? It's actually a ridiculous notion. So for those of us that identify as Black, um, every moment is Black History Moment, right? Because we're always creating, and so we're always creating history, her story, they story. And so today I just want to take a moment to recognize, as in this moment, I invite all my ancestors to come and be with me and to support me. And I give thanks for every part of me that comes before this moment. And I welcome it into this space right now. But one particular ancestor I want to welcome in and claim is Ida B. Wells. Ida B. Wells. So,
Ida B. Wells. There's a housing development in Chicago named after her.
Yeah, that's the least way that they could recognize her, by putting her name on a building that is seeking to keep the oppressed. So you've got something that's playing in a different. Okay, so Ida B. Wells, and this comes from a speech that she wrote on February 13th. So in the month of February. But in 1893, and she was addressing a faith community in Boston. And if you haven't read this, it's called The Lynch Laws in All Its Phases. So, Angela, if you get that for me, Lynch Law in All Its Phases by Ida B. Wells. Lynch Law in All Its Phases. It's probably available on the internet. It's definitely worth a full read. But I just want to read two quick excerpts from her speech. She says, the race problem, or Negro question, as it has been called, has been omnipresent and all-pervading since long before the Afro-American was raised from the degradation of the slave to the dignity of the citizen. It has never been settled because the right methods have not been employed in the solution. 1893. The race problem has been omnipresent and all-pervading. Ain't much change. And note she uses the phrase Afro-American. They would tell us that is new.
When was this speech?
1893. She closes her speech. She goes on to talk about lynching. The numbers, examples, what its governmental purpose was, what its economic purpose was, who was engaged in it, structural, institutional oppression and racism, and what was to become of those who spoke out. Lives in danger, voices erased, desire to render invisible. But she ends her speech with a call to action, because Ida too knew insight plus action equals results. So I want to read to you how she closes her speech, and I'm going to leave it to you to decide whether or not it sounds familiar. Again, 1893, February 13th. So I long with all intensity of my soul for the Garrison, for the Douglas, Frederick that is, Sumner, Whittier, and Phillips, who shall rouse this nation to a demand that from Greenland's icy mountains to the coral reefs of the southern seas, mob rule shall be put down and equal and exact justice be accorded to every citizen of whatever race, who finds a home within the borders of the land of the free and the home of the brave. Then no longer will our national hymn be sounding brass and a tinkling cymbal, but every member of this great composite nation will be a living, harmonious illustration of the words, and all can honestly and gladly join in singing, "My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, O thee I sing, land where our fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, freedom does reign." 1893, her story.
Powerful.
So I'll let y'all marinate on that and see if it sounds familiar to you. So I want to share some announcements.
Like the song?
I'll leave it to you. I want to share some announcements. So I am returning from the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, which is a African American, primarily clergy leadership conference that's hosted every year. This year it was in Washington, D.C. And the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference is an organization that looks to marry faith and justice, faith and justice. And so I just want to read what they say about themselves. The mission of this conference is to nurture, sustain, and mobilize the African American faith community in collaboration with civic, corporate, and philanthropic leaders to address critical needs of human rights and social justice with local, national, and global communities. So why do you care? Why do you care? Because the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference is led by and attended by some of the clergy with some of the largest congregations in this country. People with 7,000.
The black clergy.
Black clergy, but clergy in general, right? Congregations that reach 7,000 people, 5,000 people, 10,000 people. So these individuals have a lot of influence in this country by the mere fact of the numbers that they reach in their audience. So for them to be coming together, for us to be coming together with this mission is a big deal. So I want to share quickly some of the highlights of what we talked about this week. Voting and census were center. Voting and census were center. Stacey Abrams came and spoke with us, among others. And so from now and just continuously, but particularly through the elections in the fall, we want to remind you to vote, to go out and make sure everyone around you is voting. And we're not just talking about mere registration. That's insight. We're talking about taking action. How do you get people to the polls? So are you going to the polls, and are you assured that at least 10 people that you know are going to the polls? And are you asking them to take 10 people to the polls? Because it's one thing for us day in and day out to complain about what our world looks like, and it's another thing to then when we have an opportunity to take action. And so that probably means going outside of your network and circle and into your community. And how are you bringing young people along to come and vote, right? Inspiring them that this matters and that it's important. And so with that, get educated, continue to educate yourself about the issues. No candidate is perfect, but one of them will win. Again, no candidate is perfect, but one of them will win. So will your voice be a part of who is ultimately selected? Please know that the number of African American unregistered voters, the number of African American unregistered voters far exceeded any margin between Trump and Hillary Clinton. So when people tell you we don't make the difference, don't believe them. We absolutely do. And if we're looking for others to galvanize our communities, I remind you of 1893. It's never going to happen. We must galvanize our communities. So that means being counted. So you want to engage with the census. So any conversation about, I'm not trying to get involved with that, they don't need to know my business. Are you on any form of social media? They are already in your business. Do you own a computer? They are already in your business. People, they have your data. Have you walked into a store? There are smart stores. They have your data. But is your data being used in a way that actually can empower you in your community? That's what happens through the census. So again, you want to get involved with the census. and you want to be supporting others and get involved with the census. So the census has a website. There's actually a way for young people to get paid by being supporting, not volunteering, actually getting paid to go around and support people and signing up for the census. So if you know people who need extra money or people who are looking for a job, this is one way for them to get a job. And so there's a website out there. I don't have it right now, but you can go to the census, look it up on the internet. What does Yadiel Christmas call it? Google University.
Google University.
And so maybe somebody can support me in putting the link up on Facebook as well as in our chat for the census.
Census jobs now hiring.
The next website that I want to bring your attention to, the next opportunity to actually do something, is that June 20th, 2020, there will be a Poor People's March in Washington. And this is going to be hosted by the Poor People's Campaign in partnership with other organizations. So yes, this is a continuation of the mission that Martin Luther King talked about while he was still alive. That really, the majority of the people in our communities are living under the poverty line. And so this is a campaign. We're not just talking about the working class. They want to talk about the working class, the working class, the working class. That's all they're talking about in these debates. What about the class that is not working? What are we going to do about the class that is not working? Well, what we're going to do is that we're going to bring attention to that in Washington, D.C. And so here we go, pasted in the chat here. Maybe someone on Facebook can also post it there. You can sign up and get information. And so what we want to do and what we want to declare is that they're asking organizations like ours to donate at least $1,000 to the campaign. And so we ask you to support us in supporting them. We want to give at least $1,000 to the Poor People's Campaign to support this mission and to bring buses down to the march. And so we also want to ask our community to support us when event? June 20th, 2020. We also want to ask our community to come together and support us in getting some vans and buses and some caravans, some taking off work, and go out here and support this Poor People's Campaign. For us, by us. So with that, I'm going to close my announcements and ask anyone who's on the call, if you have any announcements, please jump on. We'd love to hear what's going on and how we can support you. Anyone? Okay, great. So if you think of anything, you can feel free to put it in the chat. You can feel free to comment on Facebook and let us know any announcements that you have. So hi, Jamia. Hi, Lois. Thank you for joining us via Facebook. And Mark, over to you.
Awesome. So that the Ida B. Wells is interesting because, she is actually more than a housing project. But that's one of the housing projects that my mother lived in Chicago. And then just later on, fast forward to about 2 years ago, her organization, a nonprofit organization my daughter worked for, had a project where she was assigned in the creation of a celebration around Ida B. Wells that they did in Chicago a couple of years ago. So Ida B. Wells is someone who's had an influence on my life and touched my life in a number of ways. And had no way of knowing that those words now sound familiar. I know you won't. You like to let people figure it out on their own, but are those the words I've heard in the national anthem?
You've heard them lots of places. And so, I leave it to those in the chat. If those words sound familiar, if you feel like you've heard them in another speech.
Can you just read the last of those words, what she said again at the end of her speech? I just want to hear that one more time.
She said, then no longer will our national hymn be sounding brass and a tingling cymbal, but every member of this great composite nation will be a living, harmonious illustration of the words, and all can honestly and gladly join us in singing. My country, 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. There where our land where our fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, freedom does ring. Yes, it's a song, so other people have heard it and said it and sung it. Yes, I'm just wondering if anyone remembers a famous speech where this same song was used as closing the speech. So again, we'll leave that there.
Yeah. Well, Ida B. Wells certainly had a story, right? She certainly had a story. What we want to talk about today is the power of your story. Now, I'm going to share some information with you, and I'm also looking for this to be interactive. And so there may be a time where you may just want to grab if you're listening to us on the chat or the Facebook Live, you want to grab a piece of paper to be able to write something down or jot it down on your phone, because there's going to be a piece where I'm going to ask you to write something down for us. But let's just talk about story. The stories, they have been used since the beginning of time to share information, right? And they've been used to teach, to inspire, and to motivate people. And it's not just science, but my experience is that telling stories is one of the most powerful means that people have to influence others, right? To not only just to teach others, but to influence others. But according to the Harvard Business Review, what makes storytelling so effective for learning is that storytelling forges connections among people and between people and ideas. Let me say it again. Storytelling forges connections among people and between people and ideas. Stories convey the culture, history, and values that unite people. That's the Harvard Business Review, December 20, 2017, that was written. Now, storytelling has earned its place as probably one of the most important human traditions that exists, right? Now, I don't know. Let's just pause for a second. If you can nod your head or join in the chat. Can you think of a tradition that you have in which storytelling is a part of? Nate, can you think of one? So one of the things that comes to mind with me is my buddy David Shanks, who actually now, no surprise, is a writer in Hollywood. When we were in high school, every Monday morning, our group would get together. We get to high school early. We'd have practice, and we get there to eat breakfast before class started. And we sit around this table we call the Gold House, and we would tell stories about the weekend. And I tell you, nobody could tell a story like that. Now, all of us may have been there in the same experience, but it just seemed somehow very different the way that Dave would tell it, such that we were so encompassed in what he was saying. We were like, wow, like we were reliving it, And so storytelling, for me, really it's an important reason that every story contains a lesson to instruct the audience. Right? So that's the reason that it's used and effective in teaching, because it contains a lesson to instruct the audience. So some of those stories teach us things like how to love, teach us how to forgive others, how to be just, how to strive for better than we have, from ancient novels to epics, actually some stories, so what we call some narratives, have changed history. So let me just give you a couple of examples of the power of stories from a historical perspective. So you've heard of Alexander the Great. I'm sure many of you may have heard of Alexander the Great. So Alexander the Great was a great leader. He was groomed to be the leader of Macedonia. And his father was assassinated when he was pretty young. And so Alexander took over the throne pretty quickly. He exceeded all expectations. So not only did he secure the safety of his kingdom, but according to the way that it's documented, he also defeated the entire Persian Empire, right? Conquering a vast realm that stretched from Egypt to northern India. Now, the entire Persian Empire that went from Egypt to northern India. Now, he had a secret weapon. You know what his secret weapon was? It was Homer's Iliad. It was Homer's Iliad. And he had learned to read and write by studying this text, as a child. Aristotle was his teacher, philosopher Aristotle. But it had repercussions because it helped to shape the entire society and its ethics. It taught them things like how a community was to embody, how to live, how to enact, how to make moral choices like being courageous, and how that can have an impact on the general public. And so he used the stories that he got from the Iliad to guide his life as a leader in these wars and dominating this region of the world in that period of time. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. Pretty fascinating. Let me give you another example. There's a guy, there's an Italian author. His name is Dante Alighieri. I may have said his name wrong. Did I say his name wrong? Because you're smiling. You just smile because you think I might not have said it right.
I'm just smiling because I'm joyful. That was the prayer that we had. I'm happy to be here.
So this guy Dante. Now Dante, he wrote a poem to capture the whole Christian thing around purgatory, heaven, and hell, right? And it's supposed to be a comedy, right? It's supposed to be a comedy. It was a famous book, right? Now, he didn't write this in Latin. He wrote this thing in a dialect of Tuscan. Now you say, why is that important? Why is that important? Because his decision to use this dialect of Tuscany actually turned that dialect into the legitimate language which we now call Italian. So stories have influenced culture and society and history in ways that I don't think that even the people that were doing it at the time even imagined, right? Now, no, technology came into place and, and that helped to increase the reach of stories because now they weren't just ear to ear, they could be written and they could be shared. And particularly, when we talked about printing, right now, this tradition, this science of printing and paper originally is credited to the Chinese. But then it's not really credited to the Chinese, but according to history, you'll find it. So I'll tell you though, in the Arabic world, this development with printing came really present because they had acquired this secret from making paper from China, right? They acquired it and turned it into a thriving industry. And for the first time, stories that had been told orally made it into writing, right? And one such example is a story such as the collection called 1001 Nights. Now, you've heard that story?
I am.
You are familiar. You learned about that in divinity school, right? Yeah. Now, I had never heard of this story before. And so this is her story. She talked about with Ida B. Wells. This is a bit of her story. So there's a king, and he is a very powerful king. And this king has a reputation for he takes a woman for one night and then he kills her, right? Right. And so there's this beautiful woman named
Shahrazad.
Ooh, baby, yeah, too. I was gonna get it right too, but thank you for supporting me. Shahrazad, right? And the king, was enthralled with Shahrazad, and he said, "Bring Shahrazad to me." Now, everybody knew that after being with this king, you were gonna die, and so Shahrazad began to tell the story, the king's story, at the end of the night, right? And he was so enthralled that he didn't kill her. And then the next night, she told me another story. And this went on for 1001 nights, such that she changed the heart of the king. That only did he make her the queen, but she became the hero of storytelling. So from a historical perspective, storytelling has been very powerful. It's in those examples, it's created a language that didn't exist. It created a format to go out and conquer the world based on some other stories around some things that weren't even true around a Greek society that didn't even exist, because it had these principles around courage and around how you engage with people that it took on. It saved a woman's life and then also had her known as the queen of storytelling. So, and it evolves. It continues to evolve. We've got we got the internet now, right? And so you've got beyond printing and pressing, and it's really interesting because we'll call the reinvention of print is a credit to happen in Northern Europe, where this literature started really spreading, right? And you had people like the author of Frankenstein, who was writing about utopias and the division between science and things. And so what we know is that stories have had a very powerful impact on history. So let's pause there. Let's pause for a second. This is Sacred Space Sunday. Why are we talking about history?
Why are we talking about history?
Yeah.
Her story.
Oh, her story, right?
Shahrazad.
Shahrazad. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. Shahrazad, yeah. She would be very happy.
Shiro.
the shero, thank you, I said the hero story, the shero storyteller. And so, because it is impossible, as we believe, to separate anything from one thing when it's all one thing. Just like we believe in integrated life, we're mind, body, and spirit, according to our beliefs, that the spirit is also a part of history. So let's talk about some of the spiritual perspectives of history, right? Because we want to get to the power of your story. So look, how many of us really go out and tell our story? So according to the chat,
asking for answers, people to talk.
Go ahead.
yes, ma'am. How many people go out and tell our story?
I do. You said how many do? You're not asking me to tell my story now, are you?
Not in this moment, but hold on, I might come back to that. But
I do tell my story. It's I actually had an interesting experience today with telling my story. Didn't always return back to me very well, but that's a part of it. But I think the story is for us to tell. I think it's a journey. I think it's a testimony.
yes.
I definitely believe in telling my story. It don't always feel so good with people's reaction, but I tell it anyway.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Ty, because many of us don't believe our stories are worth telling. They think they're too small and insignificant. We want to hear the stories about the rich and the famous, but the story about the everyday person we don't necessarily think is important. Yet we've all, and as you just described, Ty, have had special moments and experiences in our lives that make us the people we are today. We all have had them, right? And so your story, gives your life meaning and purpose, right? It's the story around how you arrived at a spiritual place. We didn't just arrive at Sacred Space Sunday on February 3rd. This was a journey, right? Was there a single moment of enlightenment? Was there a moment when you say, hey, when your eyes always green? Was there a moment when, maybe, you heard about stories, if you were raised in the church like I was, you heard about stories around the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan, and maybe your personal story is you were the Good Samaritan, or maybe your personal story, you were the one laying on the side of the road that needed some help. Or maybe your personal story is one of redemption because you got to the point where you felt like all hope was gone. There was no other side. We heard a brother on Sacred Space Sunday tell us a couple weeks. His story was that life wasn't really worth moving forward. So all of our stories have a moment where we can use them to enlighten, to inspire, to teach, to motivate others, depending on if you believe your story is important. Now look at this. Now let me take this home. Is it possible that human beings are story-shaped creatures? Just think about that in your mind. Possible that human beings are story-shaped creatures. Like we are born in stories. We're raised in stories. We live and we die in stories. And whenever we have a big question like, who am I? Why am I here? What should I do? What happens to me? We tell a story. Whenever we have a question, we tell a story. And maybe, just maybe, this is how we tie in the Sacred Space Sunday, stories are God's idea, or Allah's ideal, or the divine's ideal, or whatever you choose to call it. Maybe they are a divine ideal. Maybe the divine is the one who created story, the form of story, and us as story-shaped creatures, right? Such that this story can represent and present itself to creation. So let me just say that again in another way, in case that wasn't clear. Maybe the divine created Mark to be a story creature so that he can present Mark in a story to present the divine to others. So let me say that another way. Let me say it one more time. So maybe Mark went through a depression, and maybe Mark thought he was a failure as a father, or maybe Mark thought he was a big shot in life and he had a humbling experience. And maybe Mark had forgot about the spiritual connection that's important because he had the physical and he had the other stuff, but he didn't have the spiritual, and so he was out of whack. And so maybe God said, let me use that story to show you what's possible when it's missing, and then what's possible when it comes together, and show you Mark right now on 2:23:20. Or maybe that's Angela, or maybe it's Ashley, or Nikki, or Galaxy X10, or Naomi. Maybe that story is is you as a divine story because God, the stories are God's idea.
Yes.
I'm hot, sweating now, baby.
Yes.
So, Joy, should I pause there for a second?
No, I'm just sitting here in the presence of a couple of big stories that were shared orally and subsequently written. One of them, a collection of them, known as the Bible, of stories shared, and the power of sharing those stories.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Billions of people on the planet that identify as Christians because those stories were shared, preserved, collected, and continue to be retold.
Yeah. Now staying with that point. Now, so let me tell you this. Now here's another interesting fact. Stories are a generation away from being extinct. A generation away from being extinct. So you go back and you say, well, man, the way that this story was presented to me wasn't the way that I understood it really happened. Because they're a generation away from being extinct. And so who is it up to keep the stories going? It's up to me. It's up to you. Whatever that way I got no space there. Whatever the story is, it's up to me or you to make sure that it moves forward. Especially if it's a story of truth, a story of inspiration, a story that can be used to teach, learn, inspire.
And particularly if it's the divine's design. It's not your story to keep. Imagine if the Prophet Muhammad, who had that revelation in a cave, was so afraid of what others would think, to your point, Latanya, the response that he would get, to your point, Latanya, if he did not share the revelation that came to him from the angel Jibril by way of God, that was to liberate and form a people that over 1,400 years later still are devoted to God.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because powerful stories have the potential to change us. Now, let me tell you this. Powerful stories ain't no punk. They're aggressive. Because this is what they're going to tell you. They don't exist to kill time. They exist to redeem time. Let me say it again. Powerful stories don't exist to kill time. So we ain't telling stories just for the sake of shooting the shit, as people would say. You know, excuse my language on Sacred Space Sunday, or shooting or whatever. But we ain't telling it to redeem time, right? They're aggressive because when you hear a powerful story, it says you must be different because of what you heard. There is no way you can hear this information and your life not be changed. There's no way you can go to the Proctor DeWitt conference and hear what they were telling you about Turnout Sunday, about voter registration that says the margin of victory for Trump in this state of Michigan was 13,000 and it was 30,000 unregistered or registered black voters that didn't go vote. There's no way you can be different when you hear information that is accurate. That's what a powerful story has, okay? And here's the other thing. Now, Tanya, this is what you're supposed to. Here's the truth. Tough times always define us in life. So our story is going to have some tough times, and it always defines us in life, right? And we can be proactive, and it's how we react to change the adversity that makes us into the people that we are today. It ain't the fact that you had adversity, because everybody's going to have some adversity. It's how you react to the adversity that makes us into the people that we have today. And that's why it's important to tell your story, because somebody needs some hope that, hey, when I face this adversity, I can react to it and I can come through it. There's another side for it. There's victory. There's relief. There's help. Woo. Help me, Lord. So I know we got an I plus A plus R, but do you let me want to pause before we jump into I plus A plus R, man?
You got it.
I got it. Let me go ahead and give it to y'all, and then we can open up the conversation. Let me go ahead and give it to y'all. We can open up the conversation. I plus A equals R. This is our formula. Insight plus application each result. results. Equals that eats equals results. Insight plus application equals results. So here are some 3 things you can teach, because I want you to do this. Write one story about you. And I'm going to ask you to do this within the next 7 days. Write one story about, not your whole life story, but one story about you that can be used to teach or inspire. And I need you to share it with one person. That's the request. And I'm going to give you some help to how to get to that. One story about you to teach or inspire and share it with one person. Now, whether you do it, you call somebody up, or you sit down with them and you tell it to them, you put it on your blog, on your Facebook, or Instagram media, that does not make a difference. You send an email to us, but write one story about you, right? Because as we talked about, it is critical because we're one generation away from the story being extinct. So if the story is about inspiration, we're one generation away from somebody not being inspired. We're one generation away from somebody not having the knowledge to know that, hey, I can get through this. We're one generation away, maybe, from somebody to being the difference between life and death. Okay, so here's the tips for rewriting your story. 1, keep it real. Don't allow shame or ignorance or even political correctness to improve or airbrush your story. Keep it real. Because by doing so, when you allow those shameful things to come in the way, you rob the story of its unique gift to the future. So I know for a fact that the real story carries the enormous power on future generations. The real story. Not the one that sounds good. The real story. Number 2. Love your story. Love your story. Number 2, love your story. Even if the story contains details of darkness or corruption, try to see it from a higher vantage point. What was God accomplishing through that story? How has your own life been assisted or improved or even made possible because of that story? Love the whole story. Honor God and your ancestors by learning to love it. Don't react to the negative aspects of the story. Just love the story. Love the story. Number 3, tell the story. Don't keep it to yourself. They say, this little light of mine, I'm going to let it shine. Hide it on a bushel. No, tell the story. Don't tell the story you wish it happened or that you think society would prefer to hear. And don't tell a sermonized version of the story where you're preaching at them. Right? But keep faith with the real story. See, your story is a mixture of marvelous spiritual estate. It flows down to you across the centuries. Right? Protected from the ravages of time and culture, or those things that would adjust it in a way that becomes artificial, right? Tell it exactly as it was given to you. And then release its powers to others in and beyond your own time. And so it is.
And so it is.
All right. So here's what I like to jump in on the chat, or come in off the conversation. I know we got about 4 minutes. Before we jump into that, with donations, please feel free to support us in the donations. The NiyahCenter.org. There's a link that we put in the chat. We'll also put a link in the Facebook so you can support so we can continue to bring programming. This is not for our pockets. This is for the programming of the Niyah Center, which is a nonprofit. It's an interfaith, ethical interfaith society organization center. I'm sorry, I'm all over the word. Say it for me, baby. Ethical interfaith center. You didn't say it.
Yeah. It is. You did say it.
So I just need to slow down and catch my breath. So we want you to support that. We need your donations are important. You talked about some of the things that we're up to. We want to continue. We also got a pledge, a request to coordinate a trip to Ghana in the next couple of years. And so
August.
That happens with action, right? And action looks like donations. And so there's plenty of ways you can support us. Please do support the Niyah Center with their donations, and they are tax deductible.
Yes, they are. And I want to make a couple of clarifications there. So yes, yeah, we're up to big things, right? Because we want to, practice what we preach here. And so the application of all of this insight. So, like I said, we've got the Poor People's Campaign, and we want to represent the Niyah Center with $1,000 contribution to them. We want to be able to support, getting some buses, or at least supporting people with coordinating to get down there. So we want to, not just bring money, we want to bring bodies, right? So one, we want to support with that. Yes, we're not talking about going to Ghana in the future. Life is now. And so there's some individuals we know. Our brother Yadiel Christmas is over there doing great work. So we want to go over there and not just hear about it. We want to experience it and then see how we can bring some of that wonderful agricultural science that he is bringing to the world back here to our country. And we need Ashley Codrington over there to get over there and to learn that and to come back here and transplant that knowledge literally and figuratively, right? And so we're trying to get to Ghana in August. And I also know a gentleman who's from there who is connected to the leadership there in the government, and folks, they're looking to support African Americans and other Blacks in the diaspora with citizenship and land. So, there's a reason to go now. So we want to be supportive of that. So we're not talking about funding each of you, but we are looking at how we can support with creating a complete form and an experience. And so, yes, and it's a yes and. So, yeah, in our pockets, Mark, that's actually yes, because we are looking to be able to do this work full time, right? Because we want to be able to come to you. We want to grow. We want to have physical space that you can come to. We want to reach more people. And so it's a yes and. And so we need to be able to devote our time fully to the mission of what we're creating here on Sacred Space Sunday. And so, yes, as fiduciary, we will always deal in integrity, but it is a yes and.
Integrity, absolutely.
So, so we thank you. We thank you for your donations. We thank you for your support, and most importantly, we thank you for your presence, right? Whether that is here on the Zoom or via YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, LinkedIn, wherever you are connecting with us. We are grateful that you are taking time to connect. And please invite more into this space because we are looking to build a community of attraction that is about learning together, growing together, and being in action together. Yeah. So with that, Mark.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So if you have a pen or a piece of paper or you want to do it on your phone, I want to get you started. I'd like you to write down, let me tell you about a time when. Let me tell you about a time when, right? And fill in those dots and just take time, 30, 40 seconds to talk about a time when. And this is what will help you start your story. A time when I didn't think I could make it. A time when I learned how to be a better woman. A time when, whatever. Let me tell you about a time when. And you fill in the blank. Let me tell you about a time when. Let me tell you about a time when I was depressed. Let me tell you about a time when I was excited about creating something and I was really scared because I didn't know if I could do it. Let me tell you about a time when I'd given up on love. Let me tell you about a time when I didn't think there was any help possible and help came from nowhere. Whatever that is for you, let me tell you about a time when. Take 40 seconds, 30 seconds, and fill in the answers to that. And we'd like as you do that, we want to hear about some of those time wins. Now, we're not asking you to tell your story at this time because you're going to take some time to write your story. But we just like to hear about what are some of the topics that these stories are going to go about. Because you may, in sharing what you got your time win, you may inspire somebody else to think about a time win for them. Does that make sense now? So do you want to go ahead and just kind of get my voice is kind of, can you lead the conversation on that?
Anybody have any comments?
Love this one right here.
Well, what is it you want them to do, Mark?
Let's hear about what are some of the time wins? What are some of the things that people are going to be writing about?
So if you don't know, that's fine, right? And so, that's a big question.
It is.
And, before Sacred Space Sunday today, I was listening to a recording that talked about, I see Latanya, about vulnerability, right? And so what if we knew vulnerability was a strength? If we knew vulnerability was a strength, we would know that it represents courage, that it represents confidence, that it represents resilience, that it represents openness, that it represents power. All things that we would look to embrace, but look to skirt the thing that fundamentally is required for any one of those things to be fully operable. Without the vulnerability, any one of those aspects is incomplete because there is a dimension of inauthenticity. So, what does it mean to tell our story? Means in any moment, having the courage, being willing to be with the vulnerability about using our voice. Latanya? I saw you come off mute, so I'm not sure if you had something. Cheryl?
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's so funny that you picked the topic of storytelling. So my story could be, let me tell you of a time when I was scared to death to speak and present before a crowd or before people. Quite a few years ago, I, and that's one of the biggest fears, they say, probably on the top 5 list of fears of people, of speaking before a crowd or speaking before people. And I still remember a time at work when that was something I wanted to overcome. And so I volunteered to speak at some session, some brown bag or whatever. And I prepared and was ready, and I got before the crowd, and my voice shook the entire presentation. And you could look out into the crowd and just see, like, people couldn't even look at me, because you know how that makes the crowd feel so uncomfortable. So that was kind of the catalyst for me to work on my presentation skills over the years. I took some courses and continue to put myself in a situation where I was to present before people. Fast forward 20 years, it is so funny. On Thursday, I am doing a presentation on storytelling and how important storytelling is in facilitating, training, and presenting. And so I have obviously overcome that through, again, a lot of determination, fighting my fear of speaking before people. And now on Thursday, I'm doing like 75-minute presentation on how to deliver stories during presentations and during training. So it's just so funny that was your topic today. I just purchased like 3 books on storytelling. I have like a lot of research, and you were right on target, Mark. I'm like, yeah, that's what I just read. But that's a major fear, and it really took me probably a good 10 years to finally get to the point that I can really get before a crowd, and I'm not even nervous anymore.
What's the largest number that you've spoken in front of, and what are you projecting for this upcoming speaking engagement?
So I do a lot of training at work, and so my largest crowd has been probably about 150 people. This is a small seminar. There's a lot of different seminars, and people got to sign up for it. So this is probably going to be 15 or 20. It's going to be real intimate, and I'm going to be teaching them how to deliver stories. So eye contact, vocal, gestures, just not picking stories, not content, but how do you deliver stories effectively?
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. And, it's interesting. Great example of where you began, what tools and strategies you took to transform your life, and then what is possible because you chose that, and the numbers that you have impacted by a willingness to not only be your story, but to share your story, and even telling it today, right? Inspiring others, and just the acknowledgement of, and I don't ask that number about how number, because more is better, because there's different skills that are required to speak to 150, 5,000, and 5 people. And often, and for
Right.
some, myself included, it's sometimes harder to speak to 5 people than it is to speak to 5,000 because of the intimacy. Back to the vulnerability piece, right? It's a way that you can speak to 5,000 people and hide yourself. It's harder to hide when you're in a room looking face to face at 5 other people and you're the lead. So kudos, blessings, and we know that you will be delivering a wonderful talk, and that they will leave transformed for hearing your words.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone else on the?
Yeah, I could tell a story.
Okay.
So let me tell you about a time when I got stuck. Just as I was ready to go back to work. So just to give you guys a little context, I work on cargo ships. But this past year, I started a plant-based food business, and I haven't gone back to work since January 5th because I've been growing my baby. And just as now I got stuck, I personally, like, my personal funds are so low, but planted, but I've been, everything that comes from the business goes back into the business. So I don't have any money. So I'm like, now's the time I need to go back to work. I've really been stretching it. But just as I'm ready to go back to work this week, I got a catering, someone reached out to me to do a catering job on Wednesday. That's a huge amount. And offered to supply lunches to WeWork, with a potential to be a supplier there for their lunch boxes. And then also, I went to a Black networking event for Black professionals just yesterday, and I met with some powerful, really inspiring women. And I'm feeling like I can stay a little bit longer home to grow Planted a little bit more again. But I'm not sure if I want to stay or if I want to go. But this is that story, and it's continuing now. But the story was basically when I got stuck and I thought that I need to go back to work, that some things just came right in for me, like. So yeah. So when you get stuck, just keep the faith, and you never know, all the things that you want to come, they're coming, and just trust the process.
Thank you for sharing that. And so, as you're saying it, I know that you're hearing it, right? Because there are no coincidences, and the signs are all around us. So as you said, just as you were getting ready to, and how many of us have that story where we had a dream, we had a vision, we had a hope, we had a desire, and things weren't moving as quickly as we wanted to, and they weren't working out quite the way we wanted to. And then this plan B came in, even though we were really focused on A. And just as we were going for B, something came through. Well, we know what that something that came through was, right? So you will want to name it. And now you can give it whatever name you want to, but know that it is divine intervention, that it is the seed that was planted now sprouting a leaf based on your thoughts, your words, and your actions. And so you will want to cultivate. Now, don't mistake what I am saying. I am not saying that you should or should not go back to your job. I am saying stay encouraged because you have been encouraged. And so when you wonder, is that dream to be your reality? Note when encouragement comes and says yes. And that very well may be a yes and you may need to do. So I encourage you right now to please put the link for Planted in our chat, to go on to Facebook, find this conversation and put your link for Planted there, to go to our Allverse group, which has over 2,000 people located all around the world, and put your Planted link, and continue to advertise your Planted work on our Allverse space, and to continue to be in conversation. And you want to be telling your Planted story to people everywhere you go all the time, and be ready with something that helps them not just hear you, but experience your vision, right? Because that doesn't cost you anything, but it does require a degree of vulnerability. Not yet at time, but I'm clear. A degree of vulnerability and confidence and trust in your vision, and that you can say it and will claim it wherever you are. Yeah. Anyone else? Or any comments on what others have shared? If you want to give feedback, love, thoughts, whatever you want to do.
Listen, Latanya, I had a couple things. I do have something to share, but I want to comment about the previous sisters. One, with the public speaking, I had done some research on this some years ago, and there are people that would rather die that fear public speaking more than death. Yeah. So bravo to you to overcome that fear. I mean, can you imagine people saying, I'd rather be dead than I have to get up and speak in front of people? No easy feat, trust. And then to the sister with the Planted, I want to share this with you. I think it's a blessing as early in life as young creative minds that it happens, that they're able to say, I want to do something that may not be as comfortable for me, but my heart is in it. I'm not real sure which way I want to go, but I'm okay to talk about it. I'm okay not to know the answer, because really it has taken me to 47, 48 to get to a place to say, I now feel comfortable pursuing something that is in me, it's in my heart, but I don't know what the end looks like. I don't know necessarily how I'm gonna take care of all of the things that I've been used to. So I encourage you, as Nay said, you'll figure it out. But I applaud you for just even having that strength to even explore that. I had a very clear, defined way that things were supposed to work, and whether it was fulfilling me and manifesting me, was bringing me the things that looked to appear to be on perfect track in life. And so I just went with it. Until it wasn't there anymore. And then I had to figure something else out. So I applaud you, young sister, for that. And I encourage you to always be fearless in that way and allow yourself to think about what could be instead of just what is, even if it's uncomfortable and you don't have an answer yet. So now to what was it? Let me tell you about a time when it actually is a very interesting experience I had this morning. God, I know, guys, that God has placed me in this group for a reason, because I literally had let me tell you about a time when this very moment, I shared a story with a young lady that's younger, trying to motivate her and encourage her. She's still, in a place where I was in my life, probably about her age. We're in corporate America. Things are going well. You're working hard. You're getting your bonuses, which is great. That input equals the output. And so I've tried to share some things with her of where I am in my life today, and it turns out that she didn't receive it as a story of strength. And what I saw today, let me tell you about a time when I saw the ugliness in myself and somebody else, and I didn't like it. And it was a beautiful testimony. Then I log on here, and this is the very thing that we're talking about, because it took me to a place where I thought being vulnerable was not being strong. And now I recognize that it is being strong, and I realize that it is going to be my only journey to transition to where I'm supposed to be, to vulnerability. And all of the other things that I did where the input easy made the output really wasn't a real strength, test of my strength. And that test is really happening now. And I'm really seeing who I am. And vulnerability is now become a part of my strength. When there was a time when I viewed that as very differently. So that's my 2 cents today.
Love that.
That's a lot more than 2 cents. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you
for the encouragement too. It's interesting that, so the insight plus application plus results is to write and tell your story, right? Write and tell. And there's 2 components to that, because we talked about that stories are 1 generation away from being extinct. So you think about how many family stories are never going to be passed on. And people that are sitting in elderly homes that folks just didn't ask, so they heard it, or I don't know what y'all experience is, but there's some kids in my family be like, man, they always telling the same stories. I'm tired of hearing them stories about the old people. But then it gets to a time when that person ain't there no more, and you don't really know the story. You don't know where they went to high school or who they married or what they overcame so that y'all could get this opportunity to live where you live now. And those stories are important, and so it's important to tell your stories. Now, I don't know if old people's doing it just because that's what you do when you get old, or that's some of the wisdom that you pass that you learn. But you don't have to be old to tell a story. And I would say from even hearing Ashley tell her story that it inspired her. So not only does it teach, inspire, inform, motivate others, but it does it for you.
And on the point of telling stories and those who came before us, recipes are a form of story.
Absolutely.
And so I would offer, get the recipes of your folks, right? Because that stuff you taking for granted, when they transition, because we all will, they take those recipes with them because most of them haven't written them down, right? And I get that we are choosing a plant-based living. And yes, I'm choosing a plant-based living. And those recipes are our story. And so engaging in and understanding the love, the rooms, the spaces, the conversations, sometimes that's all we had to bring us together. That's the only way we could give. That's the only way we could share our generosity. That's the only way we could come together. It was around a meal. And so these recipes represent so much more than the food on the plate. So as you're getting their stories, get their recipes. Let's not lose those because we've already lost so many.
Yeah, you talking about recipes. My grandmother used to make we talking about story. My grandmother used to make these yeast rolls. My great-grandmother. Nobody in the family knows how to make it. It is a shame. They were like, I know y'all probably had it melt in your mouth when you eat them and like that. You ain't got to put no butter on them, because they fill with butter or whatever other love magic she put in there. And nobody knows how to make it. That is a shame. It is a tragedy. I think about it every time you talk about recipes. I think about that one. But your story is powerful. And we know. I know we're probably close to time. We want to go ahead and allow folks to. You want to go ahead and
close it.
Close it out. Let's close it out with a prayer. Dear Lord, thank you for our story. Thank you for the story of love. Thank you for the story of redemption. Thank you for the story of faith, of hope. Thank you for the story of encouragement. Thank you for the story of life. Thank you for the story of what's possible when I thought it wasn't possible. Thank you for the story of me. Thank you for the story of you and the story of creation and the story of life. And all that it is, and all the abundance that it is, and all of the journey and the valleys and the mountaintops and the twists and the turns. And thank you for the journey of life. And thank you for the inspiration of the journey of life. Thank you for all those that took moments to join us live on the Zoom and join us on the Facebook, and those that might be watching it. We just thank you for moving mightily. We thank you for encouraging them, inspiring them with the courage to not only write their story, but to tell their story. Because somebody is waiting for their story. And it may mean the difference between life and death. And you've created us to be storytelling creatures. You created that concept of story. So, Lord, in our willingness to be your divine expressions of the creation that we are, allow us to share our stories, the courage to do so, the willingness to do so, and to embrace it in its fullness and the power that lies within. Take us safely in our goings and comings into the next Sacred Space Sunday. Those that have prayers, we thank you for answering them. We thank you for the divine wisdom of what to do when I don't know how to do it. We thank you for, Lord, for making it happen when I didn't think it was going to be able to happen. We thank you for, Lord, just the joy of it. Thank you for the continued blessings because it's already great. It's already going great, and that it's going to continue to go great. We thank you for everything that is life, everything that is love, everything that is an abundance that is within us, everything that is within our DNA that connects us as oneness, love, and joy. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. And so it is. Ashe. And so before we leave the social media space and move into the after space, if you're watching us on social media, you would need to dial into the Zoom. This is our confidential sacred space that is not recorded. And so you can join us live via Zoom now with the link. But we will be back here 2 weeks from now on Sunday, March 8th. Sunday, March 8th will be our next. Say what?
It's the weekend of our Life by Design celebration.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Yes, we will be coming we will be culminating our 12-week Life by Design program the day before on March 7th. So we may be doing a new cohort. So if you're interested, let us know. But March 8th, we'll be back here on Sacred Space Sunday. We love you. Put your application to work. Have a wonderful 2 weeks. Have a blessed 2 weeks. We love you, and we will see you soon.
See you soon.